Sorry for the delay. I was trying to log in from the laptop, but YouTube wouldn't allow me because the scheduling was done through the mobile app. So I hope it is because of this format, the landscape versus portrait. So anyway, sorry for the delay. Let's continue. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. So last patha we looked at Sankhya. In Sankhya Darshana, we looked at Pradhana is the Jagatkarana. Pradhana is insentient. It is Trigunatmika, meaning Sattva, Rajas and Tamas is its Swarupa. And just being in the presence of the sentient Purusha, Pradhana starts creating the Prapancha. Now, Yoga Darshana bases its Karana for the Prapancha as whatever Sankhya's have concluded. So the Sankhya say that Pradhana is Jagat Karana. Thereby, the yogis accept that Sankhya's saying that Jagat Karana is Pradhana is acceptable to us as well. So, it is acceptable to us in the sense that yogis do not have their own analysis as to what the Jagat Karana is, how the Prapancha is created. So they say that our focus is not on the theory of how this world was created. Our focus is on samadhi. So they say that we are more focused towards what is the sadhana means and what is the goal. So yogis say that Karana is not as important to us because whatever Sankhya's say, we follow that as theory, and in practice we'll say that we will define what is needed to reach the goal, what is the goal and what is needed to reach the goal. For everything else, they say we agree with Sankhya. So not only the Karana for Prapancha, but all the mechanisms in which these Purusha and Prakriti Bheda is. Prakriti is a term that we use generally for Pradhana, but they would like to call it as Pradhana. So whatever is the Bheda difference between Jiva and Jiva, multiplicity of Jivas we accept. That is established by Sankhyas as well. We accept that the Purusha, Supreme Purusha is also there. But in addition, we also accept Ishvara. Sankhyas generally do not talk about Ishvara because to them there is a Supreme Purusha, but Ishvara who is Jagat Karana, who gives phala of karma of each and every living being based on whatever karma has been done across many janmas. All this is not the focus of Sankhyas in the sense that they do not accept that kind of an Ishvara. But there is some talk regarding this, meaning there is a matabheda, there is an accepted viewpoint by scholars who say that there is also Seshvara Sankhya, meaning Sankhya generally is accepted as Nirishvara Sankhya, meaning they don't have Ishvara, they don't accept Ishvara, whereas there is Seshvara Sankhya also where they accept Ishvara. But there is another view which says that these yogis who build their darshanas based upon the theory of Sankhya's, they bring in Ishvara into the darshana, and that itself is Seshvaravada. And who is this Ishvara for yogis? Yogis say that this Ishvara is the first guru. He is the first teacher of this yoga. And what is this yoga? Yoga, by definition, in Yoga Sutra is Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So that Nirodha is cessation of what vrittis. Vrittis are modifications of what? Mind. Chitta is mind. So basically, modifications of mind are thoughts. Whatever emotions and thoughts that are going on in the antakarana, the mind, these are the chitta vrittis. The chitta vrittis which are continuous unless the person is in deep sleep, in Sushupti Avastha, these vrittis have to be controlled in the Jagrata Avastha as per yogis. And when there is a complete cessation of these vrittis, then one attains samadhi. That itself is samadhi. Chitta vritti nirodha is the definition of yoga, and that yoga is samadhi. Meaning yoga and samadhi are interchangeable words really. Sorry for the background noise if you are hearing that. Unfortunately, we are on the first floor and there is a lot of noise here. So, especially at this hour. So, Seshwara Vada can be considered as yoga, with the theory having its basis in Sankhya, and then yoga's goal is samadhi. What is the means to this? So all this is covered in Yoga Sutras, which are spread across 4 chapters. And these 4 chapters begin with the first chapter, which is called as Samadhi Pada. Then the second pada is Sadhana Pada. What is the means? The third pada is Vibhuti Pada, which talks about the Siddhis, Ashtamaha Siddhis, and there are 8 in each. So there are 64 in total. But then Mahasiddhis are 8. Siddhis are, generally they call it some kind of a superpower or something like that. So the jiva becoming small, becoming light, becoming very heavy, all these are siddhis. And then the final pada is Kaivalya Pada. Kaivalya Pada, Kaivalya means becoming one. So what is this becoming one? The jiva, Atma, who has mixed up with the Sharira, with the body, and which body? He has become one with the subtle body, which is the mind primarily, which plays the various roles of emoting as well as the intellect, holds memory, and then meaning functions as bringing back memory when it is needed, as needed, or even when not needed. It acts on its own that way based on samskaras. And it also, antakarana also acts as the ego, the individuality. In Vedanta, we would call it as individuality, but in everywhere else it will be seen as ego. Because individuality is a word which has meaning in Vedanta, especially Advaita Vedanta, where Brahma is non-different from Atma, Atma is non-different from Brahma. So Jiva and Brahma are one and the same. Then how is there a difference? So we say that it is created by this Shariratraya or the Upadhi of the bodies. And each body with each antakarana will segment Brahma as though, and that is why we would say that the ego can be translated as individuality. But for yogis and for all other darshanikas, we will have to say it is ego. So this ego is also the 4th function of the antakarana. And association of the Atma with these bodies, including the antakarana and the gross body, which is born, whereby a person says that I was born on this particular date. Thereby, the association is there at least from the time of the birth with these shariras, with these bodies, subtle and the gross body, uh, in Vedanta we'll say there is also Karana Sharira, which is avidya. But in other darshanas, at least the subtle and gross body associations are considered to be there from at least from this birth, because in this birth alone this gross body has come along. In the earlier birth some other life form was there where there was another gross body, and so on. So in each life form we had a particular kind of a gross body, and the subtle body continued across janmas. Now this should be acceptable to the Sankhya and Yoga Darshanikas also. And this association, which was differentiated cognitively by the Sankhyas, is now practically disassociated with. So the yogis say, Yoga Darshana says that one has to follow the Ashtanga yoga. Ashtanga yoga meaning yoga which is defined as samadhi, but as a darshana, as a philosophy also, it is made up of 8 limbs, out of which the 8th limb is samadhi, which is the real meaning of yoga as defined by the second sutra. The first sutra is now begins the study of yoga, that kind of a sutra, which is there in Brahma Sutra also, any or Mimamsa Sutra also, Athato Dharma Jidnyasa or Athato Brahma Jidnyasa. Here it is Atha Yoga Anushasanam. So here starts the Yoga Anushasana, the teaching of yoga. And second sutra says Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So this Chitta Vritti Nirodha is needed for moksha in Yoga Darshana. And how do you attain it? That is through 8 limbs, Ashtanga Yoga, in which the 8th limb is Samadhi. So what are the 7 limbs? So these earlier 7 limbs, where 8th is Samadhi, are Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, then Dharana, Dhyana. Last being Samadhi, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So what they say is that this samadhi has to be attained with a great effort, be it in one janma or many janmas, however it works, but then you have to take an effort and practice it. The cognitive understanding of Sankhya's, where so many principles have been shown, starting with the Supreme Purusha, Pradhana, then Prakritis, Prakriti Vikrutis, and ending with Vikrutis, that kind of an understanding of the division will just make you understand the world that is manifest and the Purusha being separate from these in Swarupa, in his real nature, as Atma, not as Samsari Jiva, meaning one who is transmigrating, who is trying to become something he is not by associating with the bodies. That kind of transmigration is not the real nature, and just understanding this difference and focusing on that will not get you moksha. So for theory you have to understand this division as shown by Sankhyas, these hierarchies, and then you have to work on it, as in practice, focus on what is it that has made you to transmigrate. So there are rules to follow and there are pitfalls to avoid. So these make up the yamas and niyamas. Yamas are 5. So initially you need 5 yamas, which means you have to control these as well. The sense organs have to be controlled. You have to basically follow rules also. So niyamas are also there. So there are 5 yamas in which himsa should not be done, meaning the control. I'll just basically list these, although I was thinking that we'll do it in the second round when we look at details of nyaya and other darshanas, but I'll just list these. Just basic 5 yamas are ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, and aparigraha. So these are 5 which are to be controlled, meaning you have to lessen them and finally cease to fall into these pitfalls. Those are yamas. So himsa should not be done. So satya is a positive word, but something should be avoided. So when satya is said, meaning the truth, it does not mean truth, but it is not stating untruth. So you should not follow falsehood, or you should not utter falsehood. That's a yama. Then asteya, you should not steal. Brahmacharya, meaning you should not. So brahmacharya generally means celibacy. But celibacy is what? Not indulging into physical relations, that is celibacy. So therefore brahmacharya is also yama. And then so asteya and aparigraha have a slight overlap. We'll see in detail when we see. So we should not take something which does not belong to us. And asteya can mean not taking gifts. So asteya is not taking gifts, and so aparigraha can mean not taking gifts, and asteya can mean that one should not steal. So there is a slight overlap, but then one can take gifts without doing papa, but that also has to be avoided. Therefore aparigraha says that you should not take gifts also. So that kind of a level you should reach initially itself. There is a question: are components of Yoga Darshana mentioned in Upanishads, sir? Yeah, so see, I'll talk about this later, but to give you a yes or no answer, yes, they are talked about in Upanishads. So Upanishads themselves are, there are many Upanishads, most of them are lupta, meaning they are no longer there, they are extinct. But 108 Upanishads are considered as authentic Upanishads. The listing of 108 Upanishads is in Muktika Upanishad. That Muktika Upanishad, which lists the 108 authentic Upanishads, finds itself as the 108, meaning it lists itself as the 108th Upanishad. So the listing starts with Isha Kena Kata Prashna Munda Mandukya Tittiri, then Aitariya, Isha Kena Kata Prashna Munda Mandukya Tittiri, Aitarescha Chandogyascha Brihad Tata. So Brihad, so these which are otherwise, am I still audible? Says something went wrong. Can someone just write whether I am audible? Is the video up and am I audible? There was a pop-up as something went wrong. Okay, thank you. So, so what I was saying is that the 108 Upanishads start with a listing of 10 well-known Upanishads. Fortunately or unfortunately rather, these have ended up as the only Upanishads on which Bhagavan Shankaracharya wrote bhashyas. They themselves get the primary focus because of bhashya, and there are other 2-3 Upanishads also on which Adi Shankaracharya has written bhashya. But these 10 which are also listed as the initial 10 in Muktika listing, they are considered as, unfortunately, as main Upanishads. Actually, unfortunately, as the only Upanishads which one needs to study, which is not true. In fact, if there is necessity of any study for moksha, that is something that will give jnana. So as per Advaita Vedanta, anything that sources its conclusion from the Upanishads, Mahavakyas, that kind of an understanding also can give one moksha. But if one has to study Upanishads, then Mandukya is the only Upanishad sufficient for mukti, says the Muktika Upanishad. Mandukyam eva alam vimuktaye is the mantra there. If one does not get mukti from these from this Mandukya Upanishad study, then one has to study the 10 Upanishads in the krama Isha Kena Kata Prashna, which I mentioned, which are considered as these 10 on which bhashyas have been written. Therefore they are considered as main Upanishads. Although in my perspective that is a misnomer. There is nothing called as a main Upanishad, because anybody who has one has taken birth in a particular in a sampradaya where a particular shakha is followed, because of loss of traditional study, or uh, loss of memory, meaning that kind of a memory and retention isn't there. Therefore, Bhagavan Vyasa had divided these Vedas into four. Then he divided them into multiple shakhas, meaning multiple branches. So these branches, in which, meaning in whichever shakha followed by a particular family one is born, that shakha antargata Upanishad, meaning the Upanishad in that particular branch of Vedas, among the four Vedas, under those among the four Vedas, one Veda in which one's family which is following that particular Veda, one is born in that, and in that Veda also there are multiple branches. One is following, that family is following a particular shakha, particular branch, in that one is born. So that very branch, study of that very single Upanishad in that branch can also give mukti. And that need not be, in today's era, it may not be true, but earlier eras, one may be born in a family which was following a shakha which is outside these 10 Upanishads, where these 10 Upanishads are there. That's a possibility, and therefore it is not true that the Upanishads, 10 Upanishads are the main Upanishads. Anyway, this is an aside to make a statement to answer your question as to whether Yoga Darshana is mentioned in Upanishad. So these 108 Upanishads, which are to be studied in the end, if one does not get moksha with the 10 Upanishad study also, then I think there is a number of 36 or 32 or something, I don't recall. Muktika says that if one does not get mukti after Mandukya study, one has to go to the 10 Upanishads. If those also, study of those Upanishads also do not culminate in moksha for the seeker, then he has to undergo study of some 28 or 32, some listing is there, those Upanishads. Even after that one does not get mukti, then kramasha, slowly in sequence, they say that the Upanishad says that you have to study, in the end you have to study 108, which is the limit. If you study 108 Upanishads, then the muktika kind of guarantees that you will get moksha. In those 108 Upanishads, there are a set of Upanishads called as Yoga Upanishads. Just like there is a division called as Sannyasa Upanishads, where Jabala Upanishad, or there is a name of, by Sannyasa Upanishad itself is an Upanishad there. Similarly, there is a Yoga Upanishads, then there are Shaiva Upanishads. So there is this categorization. But Yoga Upanishads, if you look at Yoga Kundalini Upanishad or Yoga Upanishad, there are a set of Upanishads which list these very 8 angas also. If you look at the Upanishad proper, Yoga Upanishad proper, then these very Ashtanga Yoga limbs are mentioned in the Upanishad itself. Meaning it is, if you look at it, it is one-on-one mapping. So it is not that yoga has built itself outside of Upanishads, and it is also not true that Sankhyas have built themselves, their Darshana outside of the Upanishad complete, because there is slight overlap. But yoga, if you look at it, yoga bases itself on Yoga Upanishads. So there is, although it is a Darshana which is created by Patanjali, and thereby that Darshana need not be Apaurushaya, meaning it need not have an Apaurushaya Shruti as its source, meaning it is a human creation, Darshana. Therefore, there may be a thinking that this human creation does not source back to the Vedas, which do not have a human creator. Thereby, so means for dull heads, so you will find a listing somewhere. So I'll mention this. See, when we look at Upanishads, so there is a request to slow down on the listing of the 10 Upanishads. We'll see this when we go to Vedanta. I'll mention this again, so don't worry about it. Here I just listed it because there was a question. Because now we are looking at yoga, we need not spend time on Upanishads right now. We are looking at some kind of an overview, bird's eye view of yoga. So in the context, since the question came up, I said that yes, there is a listing, and for that I just gave a background, and by habit I ended up listing them, the Upanishads, which was not needed perhaps. We will do it again when we see the Vedanta. But otherwise there is a Muktika mantra you can look up. There is a Muktika mantra of listing of Upanishads. If there is a question, you can leave a comment, not a live comment, but you can leave a comment on the video, and I'll give you the listing also as a comment instead of telling it now again. So okay, anyway, so yoga, Ashtanga yoga is also mentioned in the Upanishads. Thereby, we'll see later as to, although Sankhya is the main Purva Paksha for Vedanta, and everyone will as well stand refuted when Sankhya is refuted, because Sankhya is very close to the Vedic perspective, except for the Advaita end. That is what the Advaitins would say. But yoga is acceptable as a darshana, meaning as a darshana which, although it culminates in the difference between Jiva and Brahma as per the darshana, but it need not. The Advaitins would say that it need not culminate in Dvaita. The process sadhana of Ashtanga is agreeable as a sadhana, as a means to Advaitins also. So what we would say is that since there is Upanishad backing to yoga, meaning yoga as in not in the Karana being Pradhana which they accept. So Karana of the Prapancha being Pradhana is borrowed from Sankhya Shastra by yogins, to which we do not have acceptance. We say we do not agree with that because we already refuted it wholesale in Sankhya, science, when we refuted Sankhyas. But in the refutation of yoga, Brahma Sutra says that by this even yoga is also vyakhyata, meaning yoga is as well refuted. So which part is refuted? Not the entire yoga is refuted. Only the acceptance of Sankhya's Pradhana as the cause for the world, universe, that part being acceptable to yogis, and the theory of Sankhya's being acceptable to yogis, that part is refuted. That also stands refuted by the refutation of Sankhya's. What is not refuted and what is acceptable as the means not to the end goal of Aikya that the Advaitins talk about, meaning Brahma and Jiva being one, but as a sadhana to land on samadhi, that itself is acceptable as a means. As a means to what? We'll see it more when we see Advaita Vedanta. But for now, yogis say that this yama, these set of 5 have to be followed. We do not have any opposition, we agree. So we agree that the set of these 5 yamas are necessary even in Advaita. They may be talked about in different ways as virtues in sadhana chatushtaya, sampatti. Thereby we do not, in fact, Advaita Vedanta does not oppose anything other than the end conclusion, really. So anything that is not opposed to Upanishads, not opposed to Shruti, is acceptable to Advaitins. Even Bauddha Paksha, we'll see when we look at the Buddhist Darshana, which is a Nastika Darshana. They do not consider Veda as Pramana. Even there, Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankaracharya says that whatever is not opposed to Shruti, whatever the Buddhists follow, for example, meditation, some disciplines, ahimsa, ityadi, all this is acceptable and it is welcome as well. So there is no hard and fast rule that because it is said by Buddhists, we don't we don't accept. Others may do aropa. They may say that Advaita Vedanta is like Buddhist, they have borrowed from Buddhist. All this nonsensical, misunderstood aropa is there, especially by those who are neither Buddhist nor Advaita Vedantis. So those who raise these objections, who say that Advaita Vedanta is like Buddhism, they neither know Buddhism nor do they know Advaita Vedantins. And that objection is neither acceptable to Buddhists nor to Advaita Vedantis. So it is not that Advaita Vedantins say that we are not saying what Buddhists say. Buddhists also say that we disagree with Advaita Vedantins. So this third person who is sitting in the middle, who has some other some other perspective or some other conclusion other than these two, is somehow making these two fight, and says that you are like Buddhists are like Advaita Vedanta, and he is saying something else which is also not supported by Shruti. So anyway, not stating any names, but then whoever says that Advaita Vedanta is like Buddhism, because this question had come up earlier, somewhere I had seen this, they have neither understood Buddhism nor have they understood Advaita, because those who are experts in Advaita Vedanta and those who are experts in Buddhism, they themselves do not accept that argument. So who is the third person who has neither studied Buddhism properly nor Advaita Vedanta properly, who is raising an objection and saying that you both are same? We are not. So anyway, that's an aside, because the question of acceptance of yoga comes up. So why not accept others also? We don't have any issue. Meaning Advaita Vedantins do not have any issue with accepting anything as a means, as long as there is an overlap with our set of means and it gives Chitta Shuddhi, it gives purification of the mind, there is a control needed, all that is acceptable. Therefore, everything that is said in Ashtanga yoga is acceptable, including up to and including samadhi. Up to and including samadhi, all the limbs are acceptable to Advaita Vedantins. The only thing that is not acceptable is that samadhi retains the difference between Paramatma and Jiva, which is a fact. In samadhi, although there is only one in the asamprajnata samadhi, still that will not give moksha. That is what Advaita Vedantin would say, that in samadhi, without knowledge of oneness which is revealed by the Upanishads, there is no possibility of moksha. Then what the samadhi gives, and why should an Advaita Vedantin follow, all that we'll see when we look at Advaita Vedanta. So now let's just quickly go through these limbs in a few more minutes, as to not all, whatever we can do a little. So yamas, at least let's finish yama niyama. So in yama, we saw that ending with aparigraha. So ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya and aparigraha. These are the 5 means, 5 among the 5 sub means in one single yama, which is a means, which is the first means, meaning first limb of the 8 limbs Ashtanga of yoga. The second is niyama, and niyama is what? Niyama is niyama set of rules. So niyama is you have to follow something. So it's a positively following something, whereas yama was what? Ceasing to do something. So niyamas are also 5. Saucha, Santosha, Tapas, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana. So Saucha is cleanliness. What kind of a cleanliness? Antabhai. So outside also there should be cleanliness, and within also one should have a clean mind. So basically what you think something and you say something else, this is not what one should do. So one should follow this as to whatever is done. What one says one should do, and what one should say it should be in one's mind. So when all 3 are streamlined, that is inner purification, inner cleanliness rather. And outer cleanliness need not be taught, because having a bath for the body and then surrounding also should be kept clean. That is saucha. Santosha is being content with one's own situation for good or bad. So in Gita also you see that as to titiksha, and this titiksha is a virtue in for Advaita Vedantis in sadhana chatushtaya sampatti as well, samadhi shatka. Therefore this titiksha kind of a thing in with santosha is welcome. Tapas, so tapas is austerity, so one should deny oneself something the mind craves. So following upavasa etc on a certain days as told by the shastra, basically what denying yourself not anything and everything. Basically tapas does not mean you start you see some religions or in even in extreme followings of some aghoris or some Hindus also, you see that they torture themselves. Torture is not tapas. So austerity is that, tapas is that which will give punya. So you hurt yourself, you hurt your body, that will not give punya, that will give papa, because the body is entrusted unto an individual. A person is entrusted with a particular kind of a body which should be taken care of. So what should be done? One should not indulge. One should not indulge a lot. So one should not overeat. Then should one starve oneself? Okay, you starve yourself as per the shastra when restrict yourself on a particular day, etc. Or if you want to starve yourself, then starve a little, not completely. So thereby a balance has to be maintained. So you walk the middle path. Do not go to any extreme, neither overeating nor completely starving. So you eat in in control. So you have a controlled diet. That would be tapas as well. Taking one example. Then there are other things which you deny a lot of things which will take away time and focus on shastra study. Therefore all that is tapas. And tapas is basically what in Sanatana Dharma, tapas is basically that which is ordained by the shastra, not anything and everything that you think that okay, I have so much of control, I am doing this and doing that. All that is not tapas. That will not give punya. So that is tapas. Then swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is svena adhyaya, swasya adhyaya, both are possible, meaning study of oneself, but here it means study by oneself. So shastra study, and here what does it mean? Under an acharya one gets samskara of one's own swashakha. So whoever is born in a particular Veda shaka, swadhyaya vadhyetavyaha is the shruti there. So one should study at least one's own shaka Vedas, and dharma has to be followed. So up to whatever extent one can follow one's own shaka, Veda shaka. Veda has to be studied. Vedo nityam adhiyatam. So all this stotras also talk about this. So that is swadhyaya. So it is acceptable to Advaita Vedantin. There is an overlap. And then Ishvara Pranidhana. So this is particularly that which discusses Ishvara other than the Ishvara being defined as the first guru in Yoga Sutras. Ishvara Pranidhana, meaning you worship Ishvara. This is something which is not found in Sankhyas who are Nirishvara. So here worship of Ishvara also is that which will give punya, and thereby it's a niyama to be followed. So there are these 5 niyamas to be followed, and then we look at asana pranayama. Asana very well known, nothing much to discuss there, but asana is what has unfortunately become equivalent to yoga in today's age. At the most there is some pranayama, but mostly people do all sorts of asanas and call it as yoga. So this is a misnomer. Yoga is samadhi. It has nothing to do with asana only. Asana is a means to pratyahara, not even dharana. Dhyana, meditation is bahuduram. It is much far away, let alone samadhi, which will not even be in the perspective, let alone be an end goal. It will not even be in perspective for those who consider that asana and for bodybuilding or prolonging the life or whatever have you is or maintaining your figure or whatever is the perspective. Getting these days you have a lot of these talk of yoga. There are a lot of courses and things like that. So all that yoga without Yoga Sutras is not yoga. So asanas are not yoga. Asanas are one part of yoga, and so much so. So I'll finish this asana limb also. So much so that Yoga Sutra lists only one or two asana. In fact, it says Sukham Sahaja Sukham Asanam. So that which is simple for you, and that which is means Sukham means what? Simple means Sahaja. That which comes easily to you after a lot of practice, of course. But even without practice, if you can sit with ease and there is no trouble, so Sukham, with ease and with happiness, you can sit in a particular posture. That is asana. One should sit though. One should not lie down. It should not be shavasana. So basically, what it talks about the Padmasana or even Sahajasana. So simple sitting with the way kids fold their legs and sit. That is also sufficient enough. But one should be able to sit for a long duration of time. So 45 minutes is the first siddhi. If one can sit for 45 minutes without changing posture and without moving, with a erect back and neck and the head in one line, then that is considered as asana siddhi at the first level. I think the second level talks about 3 hours and things like that. So that is asana, and there can be other asanas. To perfect one asanas, one can exercise. See, these yoga asanas are not exercises, but one can do those to get a particular siddhi in a particular posture. So we'll stop here. We'll look at a little more bit of asanas if needed, or pranayama onwards. We'll look at more of yoga in the next patha. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. Any questions? I don't think there are any questions. So I'll see you in the next patha. Namaste.